As I'm inspecting and looking over a rotor, and I've got a selection here, we'll take a look at these on the bench. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is take just a quick look at it. Now, as I look at this rotor here, you can see we got a lot of rust on this. In fact, to the point where I've got to wear some gloves to kind of protect my hands. And the first thing I'm going to do is measure it and compare that to the specification that's either printed on the rotor or one that I find in a book. And I'm going to take a look at this and I'm going to see what I've got, and I'm make a decision as to terms of whether or not there's even enough material to take off and to resurface. If I go ahead and resurface, then one of the things that I want to do is clean up where it's going to mount on the machine like I did on this one. This is a resurfaced rotor, which you can see what we've got here is I've got a non-directional finish on it. That's intentionally put in place. But I want to clean this surface off right here. I'm going to clean off the inside of what's called the hat right here. Make sure that's nice and clean. Before I would go ahead and put this either an off-car or on-car brake lathe in terms of resurfacing it. But of course, before I go through all of the effort of doing the cleanup, I need to measure it. I need to do an inspection too. This rotor's got a lot of rust on it, as you can see, but as I look over the rust on both sides, this is pretty much surface rust. And so if there's enough material here that I can turn this, I've got a very good chance of resurfacing this and being able to reuse it. Now again, I would need to clean up the surfaces really well. One of the things that I would want to do as I'm doing this procedure is, of course, index this. We've got, before I would pull this off the vehicle, if I've done hub run-out measurements and rotor run-out measurements, then I'd want to have a paint circle around one of these stud openings, lug stud openings, so that I could put it back in the exact same place. Now, if I don't have a run-out issue, then that's not a particularly big deal. It's just a matter of resurfacing it, cleaning it appropriately, and then putting it back on the vehicle. The non-directional finish is a very important thing in today's world. It helps the pads seat themselves, the new pads. I've got an example here of a brand new rotor, and you can see this comes from the manufacturer with a non-directional surface on it as well. Now this rotor here, if you could feel it like I can, it's got a bit of a glaze to it. And one of the things I'm going to need to do as I work on this is a case where I would take a little bit of brake clean on a rag, wipe off this surface as I put this thing on, and then make sure that it's clean and grease free. This rotor is what's known as a drum and hat style rotor. And what I've got right here, this surface area is for the parking brake, and it's a conventional drum style inside this rotor. So this would be a four-wheel disc brake application, which has got conventional drum style parking brake on it. One of the things that I'd also want to do as I put this thing back together is on this surface area right here and this surface area right here, I'm going to put a very, very light coating of anti-seize. Again, it's well, here's what happens. If we can get in real tight into this rotor here, get a shot of this, what you've got in this case, and yeah, you can see that, okay, some of that rust that's in there, that's a buildup of rust, and that can actually cause a run-out condition. And so as these units rust, that rust causes expansion, and that's one of the places where run-out comes in, and that's one of the places where brake vibration comes from. And so by putting a light coating after I sand this down nicely, or sand or glass bead it, if I happen to have one of those at my shop, where I'd glass bead this rust out of it, by putting a light coating of anti-seize in there, I'm going to reduce the chance of that corrosion reoccurring. I'm also going to reduce the likelihood of continued run-out concerns because of the corrosion that would occur. Now I've got, again, the before and after. Just let me show you this a moment. This rotor right here, these two are off the same vehicle, and this is another example of what you're getting rid of. In this case here, I had metal on metal contact. You can see I got a little different, I got a much grainier surface and then a very shiny surface right there. Again, what I'm looking for is the dimension of this thing. Now, I know there are people in the industry who'll take a look at this rotor and they'll look at this and they'll say, "Oh, I got plenty of material there. I don't need to measure it." Yes, you do. It may look like there's plenty of material there, but this unit right here, we actually measured this one when we got done, and it's at specification. It really is discard thickness at this point. So. Yeah, I've got a perfect finish on this thing. It looks as if it's perfectly able to go back on the vehicle, but the reality is that it's really too thin. I mean, the first time I hit the brakes on this thing, it's going to go below discard thickness, and that's not good. And so that's why we do the measurements in terms of checking that out to see whether or not we can.